Did you know there was once a country so powerful it controlled lands from Europe to Egypt? And then, one day, it simply dissolved? Or a mighty empire that spread across 3 continents but eventually fell apart and became just a part of history? Ever heard of the Republic of Texas? Yep, Texas was its own country once. Welcome back to another amazing episode of 4 Evergreen. Today, we'll show you world's most powerful nations that no longer exist. So why did they fall? Was it war, greed, or just bad luck? Stick around as we uncover the epic rises and the shocking downfalls of these forgotten superpowers. You'll never look at a map the same way again. All right, let's dive in. 9. Austro-Hungarian Empire. Once upon a time in Central Europe, between 1867 and 1918, there was a big and special kingdom called the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Think of it as a place so huge that it was like 2 separate countries, but with just one king. They called this the dual monarchy. In this setup, Austria and Hungary were like 2 friends sharing a ruler, but each doing their own thing. This kingdom was formed after a compromise in 1867, which happened right after a war with Prussia. This deal was meant to keep the 2 countries together under the rule of the Habsburg family, while still letting Hungary have its own space to make decisions. Austria and Hungary each ran their own business inside the kingdom. They had separate governments and handled their own local issues, but came together for big decisions about fighting wars and dealing with other countries. Vienna and Budapest were the centers of all this activity, each acting as the heart for Austria and Hungary, respectively. The kingdom was home to many different groups, like Czechs, Slovaks, Poles, Ukrainians, Croats, Slovens, Romanians, and Italians. Each group had its own ideas and often wanted more control, which led to tensions within the empire. Trouble grew when Archduke Franz Ferdinand of the Empire was killed in 1914 in Sarajevo. His death was one of the triggers that started World War I. The empire struggled a lot during the war, facing many battles and economic problems. Eventually, the empire couldn't hold together after losing in World War I. By 1918, it fell apart, leading to the creation of new countries like Austria, Hungary, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Slovenia, and Croatia. The end of the Austro-Hungarian Empire changed the map of Europe and left behind a story of a place that tried to bring together many different people under one rule. If you liked this video so far, leave a like, and you can also check out countries with most powerful missiles in the world 2024 with range and speed on our channel 4 Evergreen. 8. British India. At its peak, the British Empire was the largest to ever exist, and the jewel in its crown was India. This empire controlled not just India, but also parts of what are now Pakistan and Bangladesh from 1858 until 1947. Long before it was considered a precious part of the British Empire, India began interacting with Britain through trade. Back in the early 1600s, the British East India Company started by trading spices, but slowly grew its power. By the mid-1700s, this company wasn't just about trade anymore. It had become a political power controlling large parts of India. After a big rebellion in 1857, the British government took over direct control, with British officials running things in India. As the 1800s went on, the British tightened their hold, but at the same time, the desire for freedom grew among Indians. Leaders like Mahatma Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru, and Subhash Chandra Bose started to stand out, each with their own way of fighting for independence. These leaders and their movements made a strong case for India ruling itself, setting the scene for a big push toward independence. India's forced participation in World War II, without the People's Agreement, made the desire for independence even stronger. In 1942, the Cripps mission tried to calm things by promising some form of self-government after the war. But this didn't satisfy the growing demand for complete independence. All these efforts and discussions eventually led to a victory that was both sweet and sad. In 1947, India gained its freedom from British rule. But this freedom came with a big cost. The country was split into India and Pakistan, based on religion. 7. The Turkish Empire. It all started quite modestly in the late 13th century. Osman I, a Turkish tribal leader in Anatolia, laid the foundation of what would become one of the mightiest empires in history. He gave his name, Uthman in Arabic, to this new empire, the Ottoman Empire or the Turkish Empire. Its heartland was in Anatolia, now known as the Republic of Turkey. The empire truly shined during the 16th century under Sultan Suleiman. By the late 17th century, the empire was enormous, covering parts of Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. It included countries like Albania, Bulgaria, Croatia, Greece, Hungary, Kosovo, Macedonia, Montenegro, Romania, Serbia, Algeria, Libya, Tunisia, Egypt, Iraq, Jordan, Lebanon, Palestine, Saudi Arabia, and Syria. The Ottoman Empire wasn't just one of the largest empires in history. It also lasted over 600 years. This golden era was marked not only by territorial growth, but also by a cultural renaissance. Magnificent structures like the Blue Mosque were constructed. The Ottomans were also pioneers in military technology, especially their navy, which became a central force after they built their first naval shipyard in the early 14th century, following the capture of Karaman. The Ottoman navy was crucial in numerous battles, notably the conquest of Constantinople in 1453. This victory ended the Byzantine Empire and dramatically shifted the balance of power in Europe. However, like all great empires, the Ottomans faced decline. By the late 17th century, they were grappling with military defeats, corrupt administration, economic troubles, and rising nationalist movements within their sprawling territories. Their participation in World War I, alongside the Central Powers, further drained their resources and wreaked havoc on their lands. The aftermath of the war saw the empire lose many of its territories and led to tragic events like the Armenian genocide, a deeply sorrowful part of its history. The final chapter closed shortly after the war with the establishment of the Republic of Turkey in 1923 under Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, signaling the end of Ottoman rule. 6. Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia was a country in Southeast Europe, formed after World War I in 1918, initially known as the Kingdom of Serbs, Croats, and Slovens. It brought together South Slavic ethnic groups such as Serbs, Croats, and Slovenes under one nation. After World War II, Yugoslavia took on a new shape as the Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, led by Josip Broz Tito, a charismatic leader whose policies managed to keep the simmering ethnic tensions under control for a time. Tito set Yugoslavia on a unique path during the Cold War as a non-aligned state, allowing it to enjoy support from both the Western and Eastern blocs without fully committing to either side. However, following Tito's death in 1980, the grip on these ethnic tensions loosened, and as communist regimes in Eastern Europe began to fall in the late 1980s and early 1990s, nationalist feelings surged. Leaders like Slobodan Milosevic in Serbia and Franjo Tuđman in Croatia came to power, pushing nationalist agendas that sparked conflicts among the republics. The rising tensions led to the Yugoslav Wars starting in 1991, which included the Slovenian War of Independence, Croatian War of Independence, and the Bosnian War. These conflicts were brutal, marked by terrible acts such as ethnic cleansing and the tragic siege of Sarajevo, which drew widespread international condemnation and eventually led to intervention. The international community, including NATO, stepped in, and the Dayton Agreement was signed. This agreement brought a shaky peace to the region and cemented the division of Yugoslavia into several independent nations like Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Macedonia, Montenegro, and Serbia by the early 1990s. Now, the Republic of Texas. The Republic of Texas was a short-lived independent nation that existed from March 2, 1836 to February 19, 1846, after breaking away from Mexico. American settlers in Mexican-controlled Texas had grown frustrated with strict Mexican laws and increasing restrictions, leading to tensions that eventually sparked the Texas Revolution. Determined to govern themselves, the Texans took up arms against General Santa Anna's forces in a fight for independence. One of the most famous battles of the Revolution was the Battle of the Alamo in 1836, where a small group of Texans, including legendary figures like Davy Crockett and James Bowie, made a heroic last stand against thousands of Mexican soldiers. Though they were ultimately defeated, their bravery became a symbol of resistance. Just weeks later, at the Battle of San Jacinto, Texan forces led by Sam Houston launched a surprise attack, defeating the Mexican army in just 18 minutes. Santa Anna was captured, and Mexico was forced to recognize Texas as an independent nation. As a new republic, Texas had its own government, modeled after the U.S. system, with Sam Houston serving as its first president. Texas struggled to gain recognition from other countries, and Mexico refused to acknowledge its independence. Texas wanted to join the United States, but its status as a slave-holding region made the decision controversial in American politics. After nearly a decade of debate, the U.S. finally annexed Texas in 1845, making it the 28th state. This move angered Mexico and became one of the causes of the Mexican-American War in 1846. Before proceeding to our next selection, we invite you to explore our video on 15 powerful defense systems you won't believe actually exist. Now, back to our list. 4. Swedish Empire. The Swedish Empire rose to prominence as a major force in Europe in the early 17th century, especially during the reign of King Gustavus Adolphus, who became king in 1611. His leadership during the 30 Years' War kicked off what is often called Sweden's Age of Greatness. Under his rule, Sweden became a powerful military state, expanding its reach to include large parts of the Baltic region and areas of what are now Finland, Estonia, Latvia, and Germany. Sweden's territorial expansion reached its peak after the Treaty of Roskilde in 1658, during the Second Northern War, when Denmark-Norway was forced to give up significant territories to Sweden. At this time, Sweden was so dominant in the Baltic Sea that it was nicknamed the Swedish Lake. The empire also held lands along the North Sea and even stretched its influence to North America with the establishment of the new Sweden colony. King Gustavus Adolphus is remembered for pioneering several military innovations that reshaped European warfare. He brought in mobile artillery and introduced new tactical approaches that transformed the Swedish army into one of Europe's most feared fighting forces. During this era, Swedish laws, language, and culture spread across the empire, and under Queen Christina, the arts and sciences thrived, making Stockholm a cultural center in Northern Europe. However, the empire's power started to diminish during the Great Northern War, 1721, when Sweden was challenged by a coalition of Russia, Poland, and Denmark-Norway. A major turning point was the Battle of Poltava, where the Swedish army faced a severe defeat, which marked the start of Sweden's territorial losses. The empire's challenges continued under Charles XII, whose ambitious campaigns, particularly his disastrous venture into Russia, led to more defeats. After his death in 1718, Sweden's loss of territories continued, and by the time Finland was handed over to Russia in 1809 during the Napoleonic Wars, Sweden's days as a major European power had come to an end. 3. Persian Empire. Going way back, the Persian Empire was one of the most fascinating chapters of ancient history. The Persian Empire, also known as the Achaemenid Empire, was a vast ancient empire centered in what is today Iran. It reached its zenith during the 6th century BCE under Cyrus the Great, stretching from the Balkans in Europe all the way to the Indus Valley in India. This monumental empire included diverse lands such as parts of modern-day Iran, Egypt, Turkey, and Afghanistan, and thrived roughly between 550 BCE and 331 BCE. Cyrus the Great was not just the founder, but also a pioneer of a new administrative system, later refined by Darius the Great. The empire was divided into various provinces or satrapies, each managed by a governor known as a satrap. The Persian Empire was also renowned for its magnificent architecture and art. Iconic sites like Persepolis dazzled with impressive palaces, and Pasargadae marked the birthplace of the empire. An important innovation of the Persian Empire was the Royal Road, which Darius I reorganized to facilitate rapid communication and trade throughout the vast empire. The military strength of the empire was notable, particularly its elite soldiers known as the Immortals, symbolizing Persia's professional military prowess. Nonetheless, the empire faced significant challenges such as the Greco-Persian Wars. The end of the Achaemenid Empire came with its conquest by Alexander the Great. 2. French Empire. When you think of the French Empire, think of Napoleon Bonaparte. The First French Empire, also known as Napoleonic France, began in 1804 under the leadership of Napoleon Bonaparte. This era stretched until 1814 and made a brief comeback in 1815, before ending definitively after Napoleon's defeat at the Battle of Waterloo. At its zenith in 1812, this empire governed 130 departments, ruled over 90 million people across Europe, and exerted military dominance in countries like Germany, Italy, Spain, and Poland. Even powerful nations like Austria and Prussia, while technically independent, fell under the sway of French influence. Meanwhile, France was also building one of the world's largest colonial empires, which started in the 16th century but saw a significant expansion in the 19th and early 20th century. At its peak, it was the second largest colonial empire. However, the French colonial empire was not without its challenges. It faced considerable resistance, most notably the Haitian Revolution at the end of the 18th century, which led to Haiti becoming the world's first black republic in 1804. In Africa, the Algerian War of Independence from 1954 to 1962 marked one of the longest and most violent struggles against colonial rule, culminating in Algeria's independence. Other regions also saw uprisings, from Vietnam's fight for independence led by Ho Chi Minh to nationalist movements in Senegal steered by figures like Leopold Sédar Senghor. The First French Empire officially concluded in 1815 with Napoleon's defeat and exile. The colonial empire, on the other hand, lasted many more decades but eventually crumbled in the mid-20th century as countries successively claimed independence. 1. Mongol Empire. The Mongol Empire was the largest contiguous land empire in history, stretching from China to Eastern Europe at its peak. It controlled vast regions, including modern-day China, Mongolia, Russia, Central Asia, and parts of the Middle East. What started as scattered nomadic tribes in the harsh Mongolian steppes quickly turned into an unstoppable force under the leadership of Genghis Khan. Born as Temujin, he rose from a tribal leader to the ruler of all Mongols through a combination of military brilliance, strategic alliances, and ruthless efficiency. The Mongols' success came largely from their unmatched military tactics. Their cavalry, particularly the skilled horse archers, became one of the most feared military forces in history. Their mobility was unmatched, as Mongol armies could travel up to 100 miles per day. They overpowered formidable empires such as the Khwarezmian Empire, the Abbasid Caliphate, China's Song dynasty, and Kievan Rus. During the height of their power, the Mongol Empire entered a golden age, particularly under Kublai Khan, who established the Yuan dynasty in China. The Mongols ensured peace along trade routes, allowing merchants, travelers, and scholars to move freely. This period, known as Pax Mongolica, boosted commerce along the Silk Road, linking the East and West like never before. Even European travelers like Marco Polo made their way to the Mongol court, returning with incredible stories of the vast and wealthy empire. However, the empire was too vast to hold together forever. After Genghis Khan's death, his empire was divided among his descendants into 4 major khanates. As these territories developed their own interests, internal conflicts weakened the Mongols, and the Mongols lost their grip on many of the lands they once ruled. And that's it for today. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more captivating adventures from Forever Green.